Here.
Mack.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Meskel.
Present.
Braden. Here.
That's a quorum. We'll recite the pledge.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So move.
Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Meskel.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden. Aye. LaCroix.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Board reports, if anyone has anything they'd like to share. I will say that Science Olympiad goes to state this weekend for EMS in Frederick. So that'll be hopefully a rain-free event. We'll see how that goes.
I think Central's not going, but North is, I think.
North is going, yeah.
I'd like to give a report on the National School Board Association Conference I attended in Philadelphia last weekend in March. I had, I think, better luck attending some sessions that were, I thought, a little bit more useful than the ones that I think I just got unlucky in San Antonio with the sessions. I won't go into all the gory details, but the highlights to me were the keynote speaker was fantastic. It was Sir Ken Robinson, a noted thinker and author on education and creativity and education, solving educational problems. And the thing that he said that really stuck with me was, and I think paraphrasing here, he said a lot of the things that we sit in boardrooms and scratch our chins about, you know, like what do we do about that, are products of the very system that we create. And the example he gives is, you know, he's like, why do we educate our students by age? And there's no great answer to it. And it's things like that, I guess, I just wanted to bring back to the board to, you know, think about things that we do, think about things that we don't think about, why we do what we do. You know, and obviously it's easy to get up and give a speech about things like why do we, you know, putting that into practice and working out the gory details. Difficult. People who, you know, are educators for a living have probably thought about this a lot. I haven't. You know, that really struck me as a, you know, an eye-opener. Like, why do we do that? You know, but, you know, someone like Paul or Ellen probably like, yeah, we've thought about that quite a bit. But another thing that struck me was I took a session on arts education that really impressed me. And it was, in this particular case, they had the board members come into the room, and there was a string ensemble playing on one side of the room. And they asked the maybe 35 or 40 board members who were attending this session to sit down on the other side. We listened to them warm up for about 20 minutes, and then the moderator came over to us and said, you'll notice there's some empty seats interspersed within the orchestra. Please take a seat. So I'm sitting there between you know, a bassist, string bassist, and a viola player, and they went through a couple of pieces. And then they'd stop and we'd talk about what we were hearing and, you know, what your observations were. Do you have any questions about what you're hearing? And it was just an amazing, I thought, a very immersive demonstration about the value of arts education. The disciplines that it took, the different intelligences that it took. And I wanted to come back and talk to you all about it because, I mean, we're very proud of our arts program, especially the music program, right? And I just think that another data point to say, I feel like it's very important. And lastly, I attended a session on equity. It was called the Equity Masterclass, and basically it was 3 different districts. To preface it a little bit further, you know, I've heard some comments from people on the diversity committee, you know, saying like we're off to a great start, but we kind of feel like, you know, what's the next step for us? I have some materials from one of the presenters, the West Des Moines School District. They gave a really good presentation on kind of how they've taken their thing to the next level, offered up, you know, like, here's my email address, contact me. We're happy to talk to you about what we've done, what we found works, didn't work, the struggles, you know, what we had to overcome. And I wanted to...
What's the name of the district again?
West Des Moines.
Okay.
That's in Iowa, Tom.
Yeah.
State just to the west of us.
I definitely want to read that because they have their own radio station in the school.
Did they? West Des Moines did? Mm-hmm. So I've got some information for anyone who's, very impressed with, there was 3 districts. They tried to do a small, medium, and large district. But this West Des Moines district by far and away, like, had the most comprehensive, like, here's what we did, here are the things that we needed to do to launch this thing. You know, very, very on the ball. So I've got that for anyone who's interested.
Thank you. Did you have a cheesesteak while you were in Philadelphia?
More than once.
That's
We did have a session with the teachers and the PSRPs as far as talking about numbers. We discussed a lot of different topics. We bounced a couple of numbers back and forth, what we thought was costs and everything. So we've agreed to let them continue to work with John to gather all the information they want. They have a couple of new members on their negotiating side. So we shouldn't say we allowed, we've told them that they could, talk to John and get further information that they want to see and keep moving forward that way. So we really haven't bounced any numbers back and forth as far as negotiating. We just kind of met and kind of went over things. Got some philosophies out of the way. And again, John's going to work with them a little bit. I assume they've probably seen you a couple times by now. Just once? Okay. So.
You do have a meeting.
I have a meeting with them tomorrow afternoon at 3.
okay.
So it's going slower than what we thought it would probably go, but at least we're doing it at a pace that they're comfortable with as well.
And we are making progress as far, because the 2 people they have in the room that we've been talking to and providing information for, they're new to their positions on the negotiating team. So they have to learn a little bit along the way too. So we're trying to help them along those lines too, to help them understand where we're coming from, so that they're a bit able to explain where they're coming from, and just provide all the information they need and make sure that they understand how it all works together. So, anything else? Okay.
Speaking of the arts, GMS Wind Ensemble has been invited to the Super States on May 3rd in Champaign. They're one of 8 middle school bands that have been chosen to go. So they're pretty excited. And our chorus here at GMS are lending the females the long dresses. So they're going to be dressed, the guys are going to have their long pants and white shirts, and the girls are all going to be wearing the long dresses, which is nice because the other bands that I've seen that go there usually are sort of in a uniform like that. So that'll be really nice. We started our IAR testing this week here at GMS, and as well as some of the other schools. I think you saw the writing on the windows as you came in, and it's been going very well. Amanda, right?
It has been going extremely well. Between all of the devices that we were able to deploy this year, we did some teacher training back in February. Everyone is very prepared. Everything has been going smoothly, knock on wood. All of those buildings except for one have started at this point. Peer review will be starting, I believe, on Friday. And because of the devices, we will actually be finished testing by the end of next week.
And our labs are not being closed.
Our libraries are not closed. The kids are still able to access all of the resources within those centers. So it's been really positive so far.
Okay. Yes.
I think this comes under our superintendent report, that we're all through with the construction for the sunlight.
Yes, they're all live. Every building is live, and this is done. And
Second question, are they going to do a second session on the in-class?
I'm not sure. I can find out.
Kids arrived.
So we have the kits. We just haven't deployed them, but they're all in our.
Anyone else? Okay. Committee reports. Is there a report from the curriculum?
That's next Thursday is our next meeting.
Okay.
And the diversity committee is in
We
May.
met.
Yes, we did meet.
Yes. Do you want me to? So we had a great meeting.
Speaking of some of the information that Jason shared, I think one thing that we're really exploring is how do we had a great speaker at the beginning of the school year this year for staff and teachers, and so how can we continue to educate staff and teachers? We're looking at doing some, bringing in some expertise on gender identity to make sure that everyone feels confident in how to address that, make sure students feel welcome, and make sure students are accommodated, and that we're following basically our diversity policy. And then as well, to support that, we began discussion of a protocol that would outline more of a how-to support students with different gender identities, make sure those are affirmed, make sure privacy is accommodated, and make sure, again, that those students feel welcome and safe in our schools. So more to come on that, but that was a great conversation as well. We also talked again about holiday guidance. I know Paul's got some communications that he put together that's not about do this, don't do this, but more as holidays come up, think about how to make that the teachable moment and how to make sure that you're covering a diverse level of holidays and that you're not inserting any sort of historical stereotypes into those holidays. So make Thanksgiving a more nuanced discussion rather than Pilgrims and Indians, or Columbus Day, a more nuanced discussion than in 1492. So I thought that was a nice way to. It doesn't legislate. It just says let's be intentional and let's think. And here are some best practices and resources to do that. So I really appreciated the approach on that, Paul. That was great. And then lastly, something I'm really excited about. We were brainstorming about how do we bring our community into this conversation, and the conversation we were having in diversity started to link up with conversations about how do we just bring our community more into our, other parts of our community more into our school community. I think it has a lot of potential. One thing that we're talking about is the power of storytelling, and how do we help the school tell its story of the value that we bring to the community. Kind of links up with everything, John, you and I have talked about with, how do we invite different community members into that story to be part of the school community and participate and hear their stories as well. And so again, more to come on that. It sounds kind of pie in the sky, but we have a couple people I think are really passionate about seeing how we can even partner with the village, the library, and put something together that brings community together to do some storytelling.
We're
Did I
going to
miss
have the
anything?
design contest for.
Yes. Oh yeah. Do you want to?
Do you go ahead?
Okay.
You're
so
doing a great job.
We're talking about having basically a logo design contest throughout the district, so that students can design a logo that represents equity in our schools and that really graphically represents our diversity statement. We're really excited about it. We think it could be a great way for people to show support, put it on their cars, put it on their classroom windows, and it would be like a decal. So like a graphic symbol of the commitment that we're making in the district as well.
Great. Thank you. Next, if I could have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Motion carries. I have the one action item. Could I have a motion to approve the 2019-20 medical and dental insurance premiums?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Anything you want to mention, John? Or
Just one question. Do we know how many people are on the PPO versus the HMO? Is it
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm happy to get you those.
majority of them on the HMO?
For the most part, everybody's on the PPO. It's very rare that they're on the HMO. We've seen an increasing enrollment in the high deductible health plan. I know that one's up to about 70 participants currently.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions? Okay.
Weedman,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye. Motion carries. Unfinished business, update on negotiations. We actually already
We already did that one, yeah.
mentioned that one, so Move on to the Harder expansion update.
So we're still working with various legal experts to try to find a solution that will be good for, obviously for Harger and for the village, but also something that will have, that'll be good for us as well, something that we could sign on for and agree to. Currently, District 127 and myself are working on trying to collect some data and collect some more numbers. Specifically, I've been working with the county to try to get ideas of what other abatements are out there. Is this pretty typical for other communities, or is this really unique to Grays Lake? Who else is getting them? What's the average size of those abatements? Is this on par with what other abatements are happening? Just trying to get a context for the request. We haven't heard back, but this is obviously a really busy time of year for the county as they're setting out the levies to all the different taxing districts. District 127, Lake County is a little weird in that most other counties have an in-house county department for economic development. Lake County has an outsourced nonprofit called Lake County Partners. District 127's report to me about that conversation was that Lake County Partners is aware of this particular one. They support it. They think it's great for Grays Lake and Lake County to try to keep Harger, obviously. So we're still trying to gather some data from different sources to make sure that the numbers match up and the numbers line up for what Harger needs and what we can do. So I don't have a recommendation at this point. We're still trying to find something that would be amenable not only just for this, but also for future projects as well, in case the village has other projects coming down the pipeline that we're not aware of. I know that's been a passion of the board, is if we're going to come up with a solution, let's find something that can be a standard that we could agree to in other situations as well. So hopefully I'll have more information from our various legal experts at the next board meeting.
And we're meeting with the superintendent and the CSBO from 127 on Thursday.
Correct.
Okay. I would like to create a district policy that covers these instances.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if we have a next policy meeting scheduled, policy committee meeting.
We've got to, though.
But for the next one, I think we should start talking about that just to, with whatever information John finds out, and then whatever other ideas we have to put a framework around how these are handled. Would help us going forward for sure.
Time is your meeting Thursday?
10 o'clock.
10 a.m.
You're welcome to come if you want to.
Tomorrow, Thursday?
No, a
Next
week ago.
Thursday.
A week ago. No, a week ago, next week. Maybe I should just not say anything
I
tonight.
got
Time machine. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Prairie View paving project. That's a lot of P's.
There are a lot of fees.
And they had parking there too.
So we've been in discussion with Wold Architects for help in designing and getting some estimates for what Prairie View would be. We received estimates that included a scope of things. So we had Prairie View as a whole. Prairie View is individual parts from the bus lane to the circle to the staff lot. And also during the course of that, it just became clear, I think, over the last couple of months that GMS, which we had originally planned for either next summer or the summer after that, was at a point where we really needed to do something sooner rather than later. Fortunately, things like the Frederick lot, because of all the work we did last summer, we can flex that for later and do that as a different project, so it's not going to really have a large impact budget-wise. So we're bringing you guys, we're bringing you, the board, the bus lot for Prairie View, which is in pretty dire shape, and the GMS lot for construction work this summer. And yeah. Okay.
Do you have any ballpark idea on what the costs are going to be that we're looking at?
835.
Yes, about 835 total.
Right.
And that's both lots.
Right.
There's also a little bit of, I should mention this as well, there's also a little bit of work out there at Park. There's a sidewalk out there that is pretty dramatically crumbling. So we're trying to make sure that we get that taken care of before it becomes a safety issue.
Was it just the bus lot at Park or Prairie View that needed to get done, or was the rest of the lot needed to get done too?
The whole lot needed to get done, but we didn't have it set for the budget to try to, we were going to see where the numbers fell. But as we looked at the bus lot at Prairie View, there was some additional drainage issues that we needed to address beyond just repaving it. So there's some additional, I forget the name of, what's the term?
Drainage, yes, but it's, we're gonna put another storm sewer up closer towards 120. Because that seems to be the softest spot in the parking lot, like we're not getting enough water coming off the parking lot. There's only 2 drains in the parking lot. So we're gonna add a third one up towards the north end of the parking lot.
We feel like a lot of what's caused the issues at Prairie View for the parking lot to deteriorate a little bit quicker than we thought it would is because there hasn't been enough drainage on that lot. So we're hoping that'll help us extend the life of that whole lot.
Is that the original pavement at Prairie View?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's the original pavement at Frederick's also.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've maintained them and took them about as long as you're probably gonna really take asphalt.
How old is the pavement here in this lot?
This one, I wanna say they did it in 90, when did it be, 90, 2001, 2002.
Okay.
We did quite a, as I've said before, our roofing and paving all seem to come in that lump, because all the buildings are so close as we were upgrading on the old buildings and building new ones.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be about 2 to 3 years apart as they keep coming along. Other thing I'll have you guys note, there is a 10% contingency on that, so if we don't use it, that'll be a savings also off the price.
You're gonna go out to bid in May?
Yeah. What are you guys' feeling on doing the project?
Well, I think, they have to be done
Right.
here for sure.
I guess what I'm asking is we need to push a little bit along here so we can get the architects at least doing their part of the job.
The big question is it within the budget parameters that you'd have
Yeah.
set aside in the next couple of years to be able to do these projects now and kind of flex them to a little bit later? As
Absolutely.
long as you're comfortable. I mean,
Yeah.
they need to get done, especially this lot here.
Yeah, I just want to know we can get the design phase at least and pay the architects. I mean,
Yeah,
God knows
essentially-
what the bids are going to come in at, but,
Mhm.
at least we can get it designed and get it out there so we can get a solid number to you guys and what it's going to cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we going to have any little different design for this pickup out here?
No.
No, same thing?
Yeah.
We have asked Marcus if he wanted the parking lot surveyed, and he didn't seem to think it was going to be needed. We are in the process of doing the one out at Park, though.
Yeah.
When will they be done with that?
He wasn't quite sure. He wanted to catch, I think, a day like today where it was raining, so he could go out and really see what traffic looks like on a high-volume day, like raining and that stuff. So I'm hoping next week to have something from him. I hope to have something next board meeting for you
Okay,
guys.
good.
Okay.
Well, we talked about the intermingling of the cars and the buses when we talked about Frederick.
Yeah.
And I think some people said at your table that this would be different when they do GMS. That's why I brought it up.
It would be different.
Different design where the cars and the buses, the kids have to step between the two.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's,
That's why I bring it up.
yeah, no, I was thinking about that last week, actually, about how to, I mean, unless, other than just restriping the lot and rearranging how things are done, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
was just gonna say, we can still pave the lot, and if you guys want, we can still take Erickson up on their offer to do an evaluation here, and it's just really gonna matter striping it. It's not like, we have no more land to put any more parking spaces on.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be a restripe job as far as how they wanted us to lay it out.
I mean, it's what, it's a few $1,000s for this last one we just did?
It was 3,000, wasn't it, John?
3,000 for Park.
Yeah, so, I mean, if that's okay with the rest of the board, I think you could go ahead and
You should be at least look at it.
yeah, take a look at it.
Okay.
I mean, might as well do it now before they
Oh, I agree.
stripe it and have to redo it, so. Thanks for bringing that up, Tom. Anyone else? Okay. We have new business already? New business, board calendar. First thing. I don't think think there's anything unusual on there.
Dr. Glickman, we did address, Dr. Glickman, we did address the issue you asked about, right? The date in April, right? Okay. Is that April?
Last version I saw, yes, we did.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about the calendar? Okay. All right. Then we would just vote on it at the next meeting, correct? Curriculum renewals.
In your packet, Amanda and I provided you a memo and then the major impact forms for you to consider about some curriculum renewals. So I'm just going to go briefly through them, and Amanda or I would be very glad to answer some questions. So currently we are using a program from Pearson called Envisions for K through 5 math. We've gone through a PDT process. PDT is our planning and design team. So it's a smaller group of teachers and not all of the teachers, because it's hard to make decisions with a large group. So we've identified a smaller group to help us in each of these areas. And we reviewed multiple different sources. We looked at teacher feedback. We sent surveys out for teachers to provide information. And Pearson Envisions has a new program called, it's still called Pearson Envisions, but it's called 2020. And so it was very favorable for us to continue using Pearson. It means that we would be familiar with the platform and the overall structure, but they did make some significant changes. And the things that many of our teachers had questioned or wondered about or hoped that they revised, they actually made those revisions. So it wasn't necessarily from our feedback, but it was things that the teachers were hoping for, they made revisions. So the major impact form is requesting a K-5 math adoption of Envisions 2020. I worked with both Ellen and John for the funding idea about it. And we did decide that a 6-year contract made a whole lot of sense for stability and for the price, because the price significantly comes down when you agree to 6 years. They also will allow us to flex grade level materials, so we won't have surplus, lots of surplus. We're able to, if a third grade 1 year gets bigger, we're able to take the request from another grade level and get the materials we need. So instead of buying a certain number every year, which was the way our current contract was written, we had a lot of extras. And I have a teacher in the audience who would probably know what I'm talking about, that was some surplus around that we were using it. So that was the first one. Are there questions about K-5 math and Visions 2020? So the second one that we looked at, different group of teachers, was for 6-8 math. We had moved to the most recent Carnegie edition a year ago, so the teachers had already been using the new edition as part of our prior contract. They allowed us to move up to the new contract. It also gave us a full year to see what we thought of the new version. And so overwhelmingly, the group also decided they wanted to continue after looking at other options and surveying and giving feedback from everybody. Amanda, am I missing something?
The only thing I would say is that both Carnegie and Envision were reviewed by Edweek, which is an independent reviewer, and they both got the highest score possible for curriculum resource. So we felt pretty strong about our recommendation to move forward with both of them.
So we also looked at a 3-year or a 6-year contract with Carnegie, and the price differential was significant enough for us to consider a 6-year option for the math materials. So that was not a decision that Amanda and I made. That was a group decision involving many, many staff members. So both of those we are recommending to use part of our evidence-based funding money to cover. for the next 2 years. We split the payment over 2 years and then not have another payment due until after the 6 years. So that is definitely one of the categories under the evidence-based funding,
Yep.
to have appropriate level curriculum materials in place. So that's where the funding for those. Questions about Carnegie?
Oh, what's the ability to flex over those 6 years? Is that a pretty static curriculum that, basically is the same stuff every year, or do they do updates that we
So
can take advantage of?
the nice thing for 6-8
Yeah.
is that we are looking at more of a digital program. So we are providing classroom teachers. This was a discussion with the teachers. So teachers will have print copies in their classroom, so if they want to use the print versions. But the idea about the digital is that Carnegie is always updating, correcting, changing. And so then it'll be regular. And Carnegie does that fairly regularly. Some of it is typos, that they find, they just correct those. But they did change a few things here and there. And so I love the idea that it's not permanent. And so we'd have that opportunity for change. There is a digital component to all of the K-8 math. There's some opportunities for enrichment and extension. There are reteaching available things. There's parent information. They're both very well-rounded programs for math instruction. Other questions?
So as it relates to evidence-based funding, I think of that as like addressing a deficiency. So is the deficiency here that if we don't buy curriculum materials, we have a deficiency? Is that how the rationale?
Well, we also have some of our schools whose scores aren't where we would like them to be, and so we would like even more. And so these programs are very, very closely aligned to the state requirements, the state curriculum, and so it's going to help us even become closer to what the state requests us to do. So that's where the deficiency is. And so the new programs, and that's what Amanda was talking about, the Ed Week ratings. Very rare do we see a perfect score, and they were right there at the top with perfect scores for alignment and what math instruction should be and what the rigor should be and what the support should be. So that's to me, that's a very positive message. That answered the question?
Yeah.
So the other major impact form that was included, interestingly, I wanted to share more information about it. So it was for the K-4 science. The K-4 science is going to continue with STEM scopes. Interestingly, STEM scopes does have a new version that we would like to recommend. And so it's called STEM scopes 3D. 3D doesn't mean virtual reality. It's the 3 dimensions of science instruction. But just this morning, we had late start, and the 5-8 team has been evaluating different resources, looking at all the different options, and this morning they made the final decision that they too want to stay with STEM scopes. So the major impact form that we have in the packet is really only for K-4, but we would like to, Amanda's already put in a request for the full quote, the full what it would cost for the K-8 program. So it would be a consistent program. We are hearing very consistent use of vocabulary from kindergarten through 8th grade. One of them is a CER, claim evidence response. And so that is a term that's being used. It's being used at the high school as well. So I'm loving that we're hearing consistent approach to instruction along the way for science. And so with your permission, we would like to bring the major impact form back revised to instead be just K-4, but we'd like to expand it to K-8 because they, Marcus Smith, immediately this morning sent us a message saying it was a unanimous decision this morning. We want to continue with STEM scopes at the 5-8 level. So that's, to me, it's good for consistency for that. And just this week, one of our teacher friends who's in the audience, on Monday, it's not on the major impact form, but I mentioned it, that we have been actively working on handwriting. You've heard me talk about that, that it was a requirement. The state removed it as a requirement. They've recently resubmitted it as a requirement for cursive. And so Vicki Ewan, one of our teachers in the audience, has been on our small PDT. We reviewed a variety of resources. We had 2 different teacher surveys going out at different times, talking about manuscript and cursive. And so we did make a decision on Monday that I'll bring back for your initial review at the next meeting. But I will share that we have chosen a program called Handwriting Without Tears for our K2 program, for our classrooms. It's very developmentally appropriate. It's very, Vicki, keep helping me.
It has a lot of multi-sensory.
That was the word I was coming up
And
with.
we were very happy about that, especially with our younger learners.
And so we're very excited about Handwriting Without Tears. Our OTs, who were also part of our PDT, we included them into a literacy job-alike PDT because we wanted their expertise. They were appreciative to be included, but they also are very excited about this opportunity for kids to have a structured, consistent program across the district called Handwriting Without Tears. And then the decision was to move in 3rd and 4th grade to a different program, and there was rationale for that, called Zaner Bloser. You probably recognize that name. They are probably the gold standard of cursive, besides Danielian is the other name you may have heard from cursive writing. But the teachers were also appreciative for a consistent program, and it does flow nicely from Handwriting Without Tears. We chose not to continue with Handwriting Without Tears for cursive, generally because Handwriting Without Tears is straight up and down cursive. If you know what I mean, it doesn't have a slant. And most documents elsewhere have a slant to the cursive. And so we felt like that was too different of an experience for teachers. And it doesn't match any of the fonts in Google, and it doesn't match any of those things. So we wanted to have that. So I've broadened our discussion today, but our request for you to hear first, and we're hoping for an approval for next time, for K5 math, 6-8 math, and hopefully with your permission to change it from K4 science to K8 science with a new budget, with a new major impact form. And then we'd come back at the next meeting with the major impact form for K2 and 3-4 handwriting.
Okay.
We've been very, very busy.
Sounds like it.
Trying to figure out all of these details. We do have a tremendous number of staff who've worked with this and participating, so it's definitely, I was a member, Amanda was a member, but we had lots of conversations about it. Amanda, did I miss something? We have already been in contact with Mrs. Lorenzo and Dr. Diaz for connections for our bilingual students and for our special ed staff and what resources we need to make sure that they have what they need to support students as well. So we've looked kind of at a wide spectrum of how to support all of those things. I welcome any questions. I know Amanda does a lot of the back work for all this, and it's very appreciative.
That's kind of tangential, but I can't help but asking. I've got 2 children, one of them in 5th and one in 3rd grade. Neither of them have had any exposure to the cursive handwriting. When does the mandate begin again? And I mean, is that going to be next year that you're going to start teaching that again?
It did start.
It did start.
For this school year, and we have very few school districts around us who were prepared to start with that. So,
including ourselves.
We were not prepared to make that because it was one of those last minute. And we couldn't do that. Some teachers have continued, and I will tell you that that was definitely sporadic. Some teachers have continued to use cursive and to practice cursive, but it was not widespread and it was not a consistent format. It was whatever they wanted. So we are going to be building. We know the first year is going to be a little bit trickier because of the transition time that we're going to miss. I think there's all kinds of other school districts who are in that same boat.
So for instance, my 6th grader next year, will she be expected to So what are the ages that these are mandated for, or the grades?
The state just says you have to teach cursive. It doesn't say what grade, it doesn't say how long, it doesn't say to what proficiency, you just have to teach it. So it doesn't give us enough guidelines for those kind of things.
Okay.
Once these students, and that was one of the things we talked about at the committee, is once students are in the program, what would be our expectations after they've experienced cursive? So one of the reasons, and I'm going to share it, one of the reasons we talked about that cursive is really important is in social science. One of our standards is the use of primary source documents. And so to be able to read someone's journal, to read someone's notes, to read some documents from the United States that were written in cursive. And so we have kids who don't have that ability. So many of the primary source documents are also been typed, so that they could be read, but we would like kids to experience it firsthand, to be able to really say that that was somebody's own handwriting who did those things.
How long ago did they stop? How long was the mandate taken away?
Yeah, a number of years ago. So it is a good group of kids who have not necessarily been required to do it.
I was going to say, my daughter can do it, but my other two can't.
Oh, really? So that's probably the time. That's probably the time period. As a former third grade teacher, I taught lots of grades, but I always consider myself a third grade teacher. That was a core subject when I taught third grade a number of years ago. But that was just like reading math, science, social studies, and then you had a handwriting period. My handwriting can be very, very nice because of all of that, but we've missed a whole group of students to make that happen. There is some cons, the pros and the cons, because some people say that a student really only ever has to know how to write their signature in life. I think as a robust student that you need to be able to look at more than just writing your signature. I also know, though, there's research from the two programs we talked about that the fluency in handwriting actually increases speed. Many of us who write cursive can write much faster in cursive. You can get your ideas down faster. There's a research paper that says if you get better at fluency in cursive writing, your typing skills actually gets better because your speed of processing in your head goes faster, so you can get it out hopefully in typing as well. So there's lots of different reasons why, but that is our recommendation. The interesting thing is that we're not talking about significant amount of time. We're talking about 10 to 15 minutes a day on the high end, but regular practice to get this to happen. We're not talking about, like I had it, a 30 or 40-minute period a couple times a week. Well, we also love is that they both have some digital components for digital practice and some gross motor practice and multisensory practice, and so there are lots of components to it. Any other questions that I can help you with?
Very complete. I've got some detailed questions just when we have the committee meeting, whatever. First, a reaction to the claim evidence response. You say the high school is doing the same thing. I'll be looking for some planetary shifting around in the orbits because this doesn't happen often, folks. Oh, wow. So it's a very
claim
good
evidence
report.
reasoning.
Claim evidence reasoning.
I apologize if I said response.
Okay,
Claim
reasoning.
evidence reasoning. I apologize.
And also, it must have been very heartening for the teachers to find out that the teachers in Montana and Missouri agreed with them when they said these are the things that are missing in this curriculum.
So it's a
And
national program for sure, and
Yep.
so we're happy that we were right in there saying the same things, that we needed some revisions.
And they also took it seriously doing it. That's very good science.
Thank you. First reading of board policies. So the link in the agenda, the first 3 pages list all the policies and then has a column for the changes in those policies as a quick reference to see what's going on. Most of them are as usual, just footnote changes and whatnot. So, does anyone have any questions about any of the specific policies that are in there?
Is there anyone in there that really needs adjusting? Because when you start reading through these, you're thinking, well, the words are okay. Is there anything that really needs a massive overhaul? Just to keep up with the times?
Maintaining student discipline, 5:230. The addressing restorative justice, which is a change in the way most of our schools and teachers expect discipline to be handled. So that is an area that we have noted that we need to do a lot of professional development in. So I think of all of them that I've looked through, that's the one that for us in the district, we need to put most attention on. Do you agree?
Yes. At the committee, we also addressed an issue that's important, work that we have to do about acceleration and
Right.
grade placement.
But that's not on here yet.
So that's not, that's coming. We're working on that to give some feedback, but that is an important one coming.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll vote on those at the next meeting.
Right.
Speaking of the next meeting,
Well, okay, so the next meeting will be when we seat the new members. So we'll begin our meeting with the current board. We will ask you to vote on any of the action items. Then we'll have a short break. We'll recognize the work that you have so faithfully done for our district. And then probably, I think we're even having some cake.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And then we will seat the new board members. They'll take the oath of office. Then we'll vote on new officers. So we have a lot of items on there. One of our questions, John was going to do the financial state of the district that night presentation. Our thoughts are maybe that should be connected with our budget hearing, our budget meetings, initial budget meetings in May, rather than do it on that night.
I think that would be fine. I mean, there's no
No.
time-based reason to do it at the
But I
next
know
meeting,
that's
right?
something that the board has wanted, and we were going to do it, but then when we realized it was the board seating night, we thought maybe that'd be a little bit too much.
That's fine.
Okay, so then the rest of the things on that night, future agenda items, obviously the update on Harger. We'll have to start talking about food service. John's met with Arbor and looked at any increases, and actually they're only going to have increase in the a la carte pricing. But they have their contract up at that time. We also have the ESCO alarm service contract that's up. So we're just going to discuss those. Action items, approval of the curriculum purchases that we've talked about tonight. Vote on the Board of Education calendar. And then we'll update on the handwriting discussion, update on negotiations, and on the traffic study. Yep.
When do you anticipate that a Harger vote will occur?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer. Sorry. But there's still a lot of discussion to go. Oh, and the policies. There'll be an action item on the policies.
Yeah.
Are we okay with, does anybody object to moving the board meeting back here instead of at Park next meeting? I'm on shift.
That's fine.
Fine? Okay. Thank you.
And not for next meeting, but I was just, the curriculum piece got me thinking about, it would be great maybe sometime over the summer, once the school year is over and you guys have had a chance to breathe and look back, to give us a look back of how the first 6 months of the 1-1 technology went. And, you know, lessons learned, successes, challenges, and kind of what's your strategy for next year to make sure we're continuing to leverage that as much as we can.
May something. And we'll have a meeting that'll work out perfect.
So that is the agenda,
Yeah.
more or less, for that meeting.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about it.
Amanda actually met with info specialists today, and she kind of got some of that information too from each of the building's pieces. So that, to me, that is very doable, possible.
The other piece that we did today in our late starts was sort of get a handle on where each curriculum area was after all their work this year. And you're putting that together, so that might be something over the summer, so you can see what kind of work we did this year and where each content area is. Write that down so you know what to do.
Public comments? Anyone? We do need a closed session So if I could have a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to the sections of the Open Meetings Act listed in the agenda?
So moved.
A second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye?
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.